Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they're making theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate a few things for you. We're going to talk about product strategy and how that delivers different types of revenue growth by creating new markets through new products, by attracting new customers to an existing product, and by convincing current customers to buy more of an existing product. So big topic today. Why did I choose this topic today? Well, not all revenue growth is equal. Some revenue growth creates more enterprise value than others. Revenue growth that comes from increasing market share for an existing product does not create much long-term value because competitors can easily retaliate. Revenue growth driven by increasing prices of certain products comes at the expense of the customer because they can retaliate by buying less and in some cases maybe seeking substitute products. And yet revenue growth driven by products that create new markets, by products that attract new customers, and by products that convince customers to buy more is the most valuable type of revenue growth. So that's why we're going to try to tackle this conversation today. And I know it's a big one, but we've got a worthy guest. If you haven't figured it out yet, my name is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO of SBI and I'm your host. And helping me today with our demonstration is a CEO who knows a thing or two about this topic. His name is Mike Doobay and he's the CEO of Affinitiv. Mike, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks, Greg. Great to be on the show today. Thanks for having me. Brief background on me. I've spent the last 16 years in the automotive vertical, focusing primarily on building tech-enabled companies, which we serve as the auto manufacturers and their dealers. Our goal primarily in the past has been, and today as well, is to help them sell more cars and also bring back more customers to their service bay, which we call retention marketing. We'll talk some more about that today. A brief history of myself over the last decade, as you know, there have been several companies evolving in this space. The primary factor that drives this is really the art and science of how we acquire customer and how we engage with customer. That tends to evolve from the traditional media, which is known as print, marketing, email marketing, even phone calls. Now we have the norm is mobile, social, digital. And background in Affinitiv is the companies have come together. We've merged 4 companies to create an innovative company that focuses on data-driven marketing, helping dealers market to their customer, leveraging targeted campaigns for both acquisition and retention. I'll talk some more about our products and services, but we primarily focused on data management, creative services, dynamic messaging creation, all integrated with media channels, both traditional and digital, with the goal of reaching out to the customers with the right message at the right time on the right device.
Okay, fantastic. That's a great explanation. You certainly are at the forefront of much innovation right now, so this is going to be a really interesting show. So
yes, I think so.
Let me do my best to, I'm going to ask you some questions that a little academic, and that's the structure that I'll give to this dialogue. And then what you can do by answering these questions is share some kind of practical application, if you will. So my first question regarding, quote unquote, product strategy is your product strategy focused on participating in overall market expansion? And what I mean by that is kind of high water raises all ships. And I ask that question because if that is the case, and we're going to contrast that with a couple of other product strategy choices, there's a certain sales and marketing plan that's associated with that. So let me stop there and ask that question. So is your product strategy focused on expanding in a existing market that's doing well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, it is, this space has, in the automotive industry, it's a huge space. As you know, last year we sold roughly over 18 million cars. And that's, the downturn was in 2008, but it's been increasing slowly ever since. So we're back to that place where we were and growing. We do expect the space to normalize. We do expect to see some downturn. So 18.5 million wouldn't necessarily sustain, but it will come back down maybe somewhere around between 17 and 18 million cars sold every year. So with that said, if you look at Affinitiv today, we service roughly 5,500 dealerships in the U.S. That is roughly 30% of the market share. There are over 17,500 dealers in the U.S. And with that, we have 14 relationships with 14 auto manufacturers. From a market growth perspective, our strategy is really to continue to innovate, bring in innovative solutions and services to the dealers and their manufacturers. We have the largest field force in the industry on our products, and we'll talk some more about that today, is really an end-to-end customer engagement, customer experience product portfolio, which we are the leader in this industry. As we continue more in this discussion, Greg, we can talk some more about what our product portfolio is all about. But to answer the question, yes, we are focusing on expanding within the overall market expansion within the auto industry.
Okay, so just a couple of clarification questions there. So I had no idea we sold 18.5 million cars in the United States per year. That's a staggering number. I'm glad to hear that that's increasing and has recovered from the down cycle. You're in 5,500 dealers, which is about a 30% market share. I'm assuming that makes you the leader?
So when you look at it, the market, from a marketing perspective, there's different aspects of marketing at the dealership. There is what we call which is the front of the store, which is acquisition marketing, which is bringing in folks from, managing leads and prospect and bringing them into the store and then converting them to a customer. And then there's what we call the back of the store, which is fixed ops, which is in fixed operation parts and service marketing, also known as retention marketing, where you're trying to retain that customer. You're bringing them back to service their vehicles, and you're promoting the brand message. And when they're in market, propensity to buy again, you target them to come back into the store. So our sweet spot is on the back end of the store, which is the retention marketing. Okay. We are the leader in that space. We do participate in the acquisition side of it, but most of our marketing tends to focus on the retention side.
Okay, very good. So that's where the 30% share is?
That is correct.
Okay. So within that space, the retention marketing, getting people that have a high propensity to buy to come back to the dealer for service opportunities, at 30%, large market share, but it suggests that there are some competitors. Is the rest of this 70%, is it concentrated in 1, 2, maybe 3 other providers, or is it highly fragmented, spread over dozens of competitors?
No, so like I said, primarily we're in the retention. There is really a few concentrations. So there's really maybe roughly, I would say two or three that's remaining in that 70%. If you flip back on the front side, and by the way, we do acquisition as well, so I don't want to say we're not doing that. But on that side of the business, there is a ton of competitors in that space. Okay,
got it. All right. Yep. So in the retention business, highly consolidated market, 3 or 4 vendors or solutions providers like yours that kind of get all of the business, if you will. But in the acquisition side, much more fragmented. And probably. Right. Okay, great. So when we think about taking share from competitors, which is always a hard thing to do, they're trying to do it to you, you're trying to do it to them. Sometimes it can get bloody. Is your strategy designed to take share from competitors, or is your strategy designed to go where they're not?
Well, I would say it's a combination of both. So we're always going after our competitors. There's no question about that. But what's unique in this industry is it's driven by innovation. As you know, there are different ways of reaching out to customers today to engage and attract them to come in and do business. And that evolves around the product strategy, which we're talking about today, right?
Yep.
If you look at a typical dealer, they spend anywhere from $30,000 to $150,000 per month on marketing. So there's a huge budget that they spend, right? But that covers all media. That's traditional media, new media such as digital, social, TV, radio, newspaper, right? A significant portion of that is actually spent on the front side, the acquisition side. That's why you see that many players. However, it's much more, it's like you said, it's fragmented. It's not longer term type of contracts per se, right? whereas on the back end, we focus primarily on the retention side. That's where we see more of a subscription-based, longer-term engagement, and that's much more predictable. The companies, if you look at our competitors, the ones that I mentioned, the few that are competing with us, are part of a large conglomerate. They're very large billion-dollar companies, and several of them, the ones that are the larger competitors they have competing priorities.
Okay.
Our focus, what's different about Affinitiv is our focus is primarily in this customer engagement, retention marketing, primarily in the auto space. So we're not trying to do this for packaging materials or insurance or banking. We're focusing primarily on the auto industry.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's kind of summarize what we've learned here today, because there's many learnings that are happening as we speak to Mike, and I want to make sure that the audience gets this. So as we heard from Mike, is that they are an innovator, and they're in a space that spends a lot of money on marketing services, $30,000 to $150,000 per month by dealer. And that spend is really split into two broad categories. We've got kind of the front of the house, if you will, and then you've got the retention side of the house. And what makes Affinitiv unique and what is driving their impressive growth is that they're a specialist. They're competing against these much larger marketing services firms that are generalists. Automotive is one of many things they do, where Affinitiv does that one thing probably better than a generalist would do, because they're entirely focused on that. So this is a really good way to think through this. So if you're listening to the show and you're saying, how am I going to grow? You should be able to have this type of command over your business. What is your market share? How do you segment your market? What's the spend? Who has a propensity to buy? Who are my competitors? What is my competitive differentiation, et cetera? So this is a demonstration of a CEO who knows what he's talking about, and you should aspire to be like him if you're not like him. All right, so this is probably a good place for us to take a break. So let's go ahead and do that. And I wanted to personally invite you to a new experience. We have recently opened up a multi-million-dollar executive briefing center that we call The Studio. And it was designed for leaders who are ready to turn up the volume on their revenue growth. The Studio is a one-of-a-kind destination. And we bring together at this state-of-the-art facility emerging best practices in the area of B2B sales and marketing, proven methodologies, and experiential learning that is delivered by what we think to be an exceptional team of experts in the area of sales and marketing, the SBI team, all under one roof. And they lead immersive sessions with you to allow you to kind of break away from the daily routine, maybe spend some time working on the business instead of in the business, so that you can focus on strengthening your skills and improving your performance. So if these types of topics, hosting a workshop or participating in a workshop with myself and my team to go through these types of things. So if you want to have the command over your business like Mike does, that happens at the Studio. And the real benefit is that in a 1 to 2 day session, we'll get 6 to 12 months worth of work done. It's an amplification of our services and dramatically reduces the time it takes to come to a solution. So if you're interested in this, visit our website, salesbenchmarkindex.com/the studio, and you can learn more about this wonderful new thing that we offer our clients. Okay, this is the SBI podcast. We'll be back in a moment.
Meet Tom. He's the CEO of a leading medical device company, and this is his business partner, the latest SBI workbook. Every day, Tom uses the workbook to guide his sales and marketing vision. The yellow sticky? That's his corporate strategy. The pink sticky? His product roadmap. The dog-eared section? That's where Tom's mapped out next year's growth plan. The stain on the cover? That's from the champagne he popped open when they made their Q4 number.
That was a good day, wasn't it, Mr. Workbook?
How do you SBI? Take it to the next level with the SBI Workbook. Order your copy today at howdoyousbi.com.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the SBI Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Alexander. Today's guest, is Mike Doobay. He is the CEO of Affinitiv. And today we're talking about product strategy and how it delivers different types of revenue growth and how to connect it with the corporate strategy. And this is the reason why we have Mike on the phone, because he is the CEO who owns the corporate strategy. So let's jump into some questions here, Mike, specific to the products, if you will. So tell us a little bit about Affinitiv's product offerings.
So yeah, thanks, Greg. So if you look at, as I mentioned earlier, focus again is on customer acquisition, customer engagement. Our offering is targeted campaign management on behalf of the dealership. So, you probably own a car, Greg, I'm sure.
Yep.
You have a car that requires servicing maybe every 5,000 miles, or if you're driving a luxury cars, which I'm pretty sure, Greg, you probably have one of those high-end luxury cars.
I drive a Cadillac, and I bought it from Sewell Cadillac in Dallas, Texas.
I know Sewell Cadillac.
Yep.
So some of those cars do require services at larger intervals, so maybe 12,000 miles or whatever it is. I'm not sure about the Cadillac, but I probably should know that.
It's about 5,000. Yeah.
But basically, our goal is to really, as you go into that store, you bought that Cadillac, you leave the GM store, the Cadillac store, is we have you in our database. We have as much information as possible on you. Via multi-channel marketing is the ability to reach out to you, to engage you in that owner experience, right? How do we remind you of when your service is due? How do we remind you of all the accessories that are available, all the different things that are available for that car? That's part of what we do. And how we do that is through traditional marketing, through digital marketing, and then through social. Some of the innovation we're seeing today is, as you know, with Facebook, the Facebook audience is an example, is reaching customers via push marketing, leveraging social via Facebook. Pull paid search, Google, putting the dealership on page one. And I'll give you one example which has been very innovative. As you know, recently there's been a lot of recalls in the auto industry with the Takata airbag situation.
Yep.
That's an example where, dealers are mandated by the government. I don't know if it's going to change with Trump in government right now, but just, the mandates and the compliance there, they have to reach all those customers where they are to remind them or of that airbag replacement as an example. The issue with that is how do you get to that second and that third owner, because they don't have that information. And we leverage those medias, which include finding customers on Facebook, finding them on Google, be able to reach them, and then every time they see that message or that ad or that targeted campaign, they are able to click on it and have a call to action to go back, to set up an appointment at the dealership.
That's a great example. And let me ask a few questions on that if I can. So we're talking about your product strategy and how it's innovative to the point where it's creating entirely new categories. So here you've got a situation where the category is now the second or third owner, and your product offering is through social, in this case Facebook, getting a message in front of that second or third owner, a compelling call to action to get the second and third owner back into the dealership to replace the Takata airbag. So that's incredible, that story. So when you go to sell that or market that to, a dealership, the general manager or even the owner of the dealership, and they're not familiar with this, it's so innovative. Maybe their legacy and they're still doing traditional things like direct mail and stuff. I mean, how do you educate them on that and get them excited about it?
Well, it's actually interesting. What we've noticed is that the dealership has been evolving. A lot of the dealers have been traditional, but most dealership now, with the internet, they have to have like an internet department as an example, right? 80% of the customers that come in to buy a car goes on Google first, as an example, right? Mm-hmm. So they have to be able to find those customers and attract them to the dealership. So what we've noticed is the dealerships they're with the latest and greatest in terms of the media. So, but there's some convincing as well. It's not, they're still used to put in a significant amount of money in traditional media such as newspaper, believe it or not, TV and radio, right? And when we approach them, is really for us, we're much more targeted. So what's interesting for the way we are is we have their customer data, we have their purchase record, we have their service record, and what's unique about that is we can take that information, and with our partnership with Facebook and with Google, we can find those customers where they are because they have these match-back technology.
Okay.
You can leverage a customer database, and through match-back, you can find a customer on Facebook, right? The analogy I'll give you is in the old days there were email appends. You know how you can find email address for customers?
Yep.
Now that exists within the digital footprint, right? So we have that. So we take that to the dealership. We show them how we can do it. We show them the ROI, which is the click-through. We show them, the PPC that's happening, and we convince them. And some dealerships and some OEMs, some manufacturers, what they do is they give us a pilot as an example. We'll take a dealer, 10 dealers, 20 dealers, we'll run a pilot, look at the results. When they like what they see, and then they blast it out to the entire dealer body. Those are some of the techniques we use today.
Okay, so let's stay on this use case because I think it's interesting. So you develop this new thing, finding the second and third buyer through Facebook, and you run campaigns on behalf of your customers on specific trigger events like the airbag recall. When you think about developing that, because in the world that you're in, the amount of innovation is staggering. That Facebook example is just one of probably dozens, if not hundreds. When you think about, developing a capability around that, do you think about it from the standpoint of, I'm now going to go take this to my current customers and offer them a new service that would grow revenue from existing customers? Or do you prioritize coming up with things that will allow you to sign new dealers for the first time, or both?
It is both. It is both. The easy path, obviously, is going to the current customers because we already have a calling card there.
Yeah.
Right? So it is both of an organic strategy to go out to current customers, and that's just one example. But there are many products like that we have. We could even talk about telematics and connected car. But at the end of the day, it's really how do we take those products to existing customers and really driving innovation, helping them meet their demands as to selling more cars, bringing cars in for service, increasing their recall rate. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we've got 30%. We would like to capture the remaining 70% as well. We have, our sales team, we have the largest field force in the industry, basically have a hunter-type structure as well. So we have folks in the field that goes out and seek new dealerships as well.
Okay.
That's all they do from an everyday basis.
And this $30,000 to $150,000 per month by dealer, does the dealer spend that money through an advertising agency and therefore you call on the agency, or does the dealer spend that money directly with you?
No. So the share of wallet that we have with them is directly.
Okay.
The OEM typically has an agency that they use from a marketing perspective, like a brand agency, right?
Yep.
So from that, most OEMs have it, not necessarily at the dealer level. What we do is we actually work with the agency to capture the, what's the brand message, what are the colors we should be using, what are the logos, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we leverage the agency to capture what the brand focus that the OEM is trying to drive. But when it comes to marketing, we're almost like a mini agency. We have our creative services, we have data management, we have almost everything you can find in an agency. So we're basically executing a fully loaded campaign on behalf of the dealership.
Got it. All right, this is a fascinating use case. I'm learning all kinds of things today regarding an industry that I don't know a lot about, and I had no idea that there was this much innovation happening. And the benefit to our audience, which is consisting primarily of CEOs, marketing leaders, sales leaders, and product leaders in the B2B space, is, by listening to Mike, you should be thinking about all of the different ways that you might bring innovation to your customers as a way to spark revenue growth, which is certainly what he is doing here. It's probably a good spot for another break, so let's go ahead and take this next break. And as you head into the break, I'd like to ask you a question, which is, you're probably saying to yourself, geez, I would like to open new markets like Mike has, and I probably would like to sell more to my existing customers like Mike is clearly doing, and potentially even attract new customers to these new innovative offerings that I have coming out. So if that accurately describes you, I think we can help you. And I would ask that you consider spending some time with us at our new executive briefing center called the Studio. Maybe taking you and your team to Dallas, Texas, and putting them in a room with our experts to kind of walk through the emerging best practices that would allow you to accomplish those 3 goals that I just laid out for you. And what would come out of that would be a clearly defined strategy on how to take innovation to market through your various sales channels to the benefit of your customers and hopefully to the benefit of you. So if you want to get a feel for the type of material or the sessions that we would put you through these workshops, go to sbi.tips/2017 workbook and download a copy of the workbook that we use in these workshops. That'll give you a really good feel for whether or not these workshops would be valuable to you. Okay, one more segment with Mike after the break, and we'll be back in a second.
Meet Jake, the VP of Sales for a growing tech company and an avid runner. During his marathon training, he listens to SBI podcasts.
Dedicated to helping you make your number.
This way, he can stay in shape and stay on top of the emerging best practices in sales and marketing.
Your job as a sales ops team is to make the sales team more efficient.
Now that he's mastered the 8-minute mile, he's planning to make his number and take over the top sales spot in the tech world. So watch out, competition. Jake is right behind you.
Help the audience understand how you prioritize those accounts.
And he just got his second win. How do you SBI? Podcast, video podcast, blog, TV, magazine. Access it all on the new SBI app, available now in iTunes.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is our last segment with Mike Doobay, demonstrating how to use product strategy creatively to create new markets, attract new customers, and convince current customers to buy more. So let's jump back into our questions. So, Mike, as the leader in your space, is there an opportunity for you to kind of throw around your weight, so to speak, and push smaller competitors out of the market, given the scale that you have reached? Is that an opportunity? And if so, how do you do that?
Well, I think when you look at it, as you mentioned, there's a fairly large spend at the dealership on a monthly basis, right? What dealers tend to do in some of these cases is to be able to, rather than trying to deal with multiple vendors, they consolidate, right? And one throat to choke, if you will, right? Yeah. Our strategy around this will be obviously to try to replace some of those smaller companies, if you will, if that's in that space. Or long-term initiative, if there's a company that makes sense, we would look at an acquisition as well.
Okay.
To bring that together, so it's a build and buy strategy as well.
Okay.
So whatever we can do to capture more wallet share in the space, if it makes sense to partner up, acquire, or try to force them out. That's the strategy of what we're doing today.
Yeah. So the reason why I asked that question is that we're seeing a trend right now where the customers are trying to reduce the amount of vendors they're doing business with. And that's both an opportunity and a threat. It's an opportunity if you're somebody like Mike and you have a leadership position, you can expand your product and service offering horizontally to do more things for your customers. And therefore, hopefully your customers would consolidate their spend with you. And maybe some of the smaller niche players, lose out in that cycle. But it's a threat also if you're a smaller or a niche player. If your customer base is trying to consolidate the amount of vendors they do business with, you might get boxed out. So this whole organic development effort, which is the build component of Mike's buy-build strategy, is really important to be doing right now. And then also, if you have the resources to do it, sometimes it's easier to buy than it is to build. And constantly be thinking about expanding your product portfolio so you can do more for your clients, so that if your clients do start consolidating vendors, you're not on the outside looking in. So it sounds like you guys are well down that path, which is great.
Yep.
Let's talk about the permanency of your 30%. So you've got 30% share, which is fantastic. Sometimes share battles are bloody. So you take share from the bad guys this month and they take share from you next month, and it kind of seesaws back and forth. How do you defend your market share?
Well, it's in the acquisition side, like we mentioned earlier, it's very cyclical, right? There's a fragmentation, there's a change of providers. That does create it does create opportunities as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I think as it evolves with this focus on trying to consolidate, we do see some opportunity there. But to answer your question more on the retention side, it's more of a subscription-based solution, right? Where it's one of those things where it's the way we do it today. Our relationships are primarily with the OEMs, so we're actually engaged at the OEM level with servicing their dealerships, right? And that allows us, so we're basically servicing the dealership, but on behalf of the OEM on the retention side. On a subscription base, our products tend to be a lot more stickier because we have solutions that they use and they're used to, and it's hard to replace. Mm-hmm. So that's how we try to keep it permanent. If you look at our average tenure with our OEM clients, it's roughly 10 years.
Wow.
Some of our OEM clients have been 15 years or more. So it's a very sticky place. At the same time, it's very innovative. But that's how we do it today.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Customer lifetime of 10 years plus, that's fantastic. You guys must be providing a lot of value to your customers. For the audience that isn't as familiar with the automotive industry, when you say the OEM, I'm assuming you're talking about General Motors and Ford Motor Company, et cetera.
Yeah, the auto manufacturers, yeah. So,
okay.
So the OEM terminology there, yes. That's what it is.
So you establish a relationship with them, and then on their behalf, you go to their partners, which are the individual dealerships.
That is correct. That's a primary focus of us. So the relationship is with the OEM.
Okay.
That way we enforce their message, their brand. So because when you're a customer and you buy a Cadillac, as you mentioned, Greg, you said you bought a Cadillac.
Yep.
You did mention you bought it from Sewell. But to you bought a Cadillac, so everything about that is a Cadillac. So you're thinking GM Cadillac, right?
That's correct.
So that brand messaging, that brand experience, your loyalty, and whether or not you're going to buy another Cadillac or you're going to go back to your store, revolves around that brand.
Yep.
That's what we help the OEM do. So we will work with Sewell as an example, but we're mandated by the OEM to enforce that brand message and that brand engagement.
So if I'm Mr. Sewell, and I own this dealership selling Cadillacs to Greg Alexander, and your sales team comes and calls on me, is it a requirement for me to maintain my franchise that I have to buy from you, or is it optional?
You mean, so you're saying, if you repeat the question again, Greg, you're saying that if you...
So I'm Sewell, right?
Yep.
So I own the dealership. Your sales team comes and calls on me to talk to me about this new Facebook thing or any of the other services that you provide. Do I have to buy it from you? Like, is General Motors forcing me to buy it from you?
No, they're not. So it's not. Every dealership is a franchise dealer, right? So the owner makes a decision. Right?
Okay.
So the OEM doesn't forces anything on them. There is a suggestion to use us. In some cases, the OEM will help co-op some of that spend.
Okay, got it.
So there are incentives that allow the dealership to make that decision.
Right. So in other industries, that's known as becoming a preferred vendor, and you're granted what we would call a right to hunt license. So now your sales team can pick up the phone and call all these dealers and say, hey, we're a preferred vendor at General Motors and would like to come talk to you about our services. Is that kind of how it works?
That's kind of how it works, and we actually white label the solution in the sense of it's the name of the solution, it's named after that OEM. So when you as an owner sees your material, you're talking about owner communication as an example, it's us providing the service white label for that for that OEM.
Okay, very good.
Right.
Right. All right, so for the audience, what you should take away from that multifaceted conversation right there, that piece of the conversation, is think about where you might find the opportunity for that license to hunt, if you will. What's the equivalent of the OEM in your space? And can you elevate your relationship to, kind of a parent company status and go establish a strategic relationship, at the highest levels inside of your target audience? And then how do you translate that strategic relationship, like Mike and his team has done, down throughout the organization, in this case, dealers. In your case, it could be retail stores, it could be websites, it could be value-added resellers, the list goes on. And in merchandise, that partnership that you have is a way to generate new revenue. So that's something that it sounds like is a best practice in the automotive space that I think could translate to other industries very, very well. So, all right. So, Mike, unfortunately, we are out of time here today, but I wanted to thank you for being on the show. What you're doing is fascinating. It is the very definition of innovation, and I think I represent our audience in that, we didn't know a lot about it, but there's much that we can learn from it. And your track record of success is impressive. So I'm very confident that what you share with us today is transferable. And if we put the effort into making it happen, it would produce results for us. So thanks a bunch for being on the show.
Hey, Greg, thanks a lot. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Good discussion anytime.
Okay, great.
Thanks again.
All right, and I want to thank the SBI audience for tuning in. Last quarter, this show hit another milestone that we're proud of, and please allow me to brag here a little bit. The average first-time listener of the show listens to 4 episodes inside of the first week of subscribing, which is a remarkable statistic by any dimension in the media industry. This tells us that the shows are valuable to the audience, and as long as that holds true, we will continue to produce them and get folks like Mike to come on the show and share their wisdom with us. So thank you for your continued support. And if you are a first-time listener, be sure to check out the complete library of our shows, of which is upwards of 125 now. If you want to learn more about this particular topic that we discussed today or other areas that we focused on, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register and create an account. Now, why would you want to do that? This allows you to personalize your experience with our content. For instance, you can choose the topics you're interested in and how often you want to learn about them. You can also choose whether or not you want them to be distributed on your desktop or if you want them on your mobile device. If you want them on your mobile device, you can download the SBI app, which is a real convenient way to stay in touch with all of our sales and marketing best practices. Okay, that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.